What's going on, everyone? Miller.
Necrotic Nick.
And we have yet another retro review for you today. That being?
Shrinebuilder. We are going to go over the lone full length from this Stoner Doom supergroup that, well, we're only super for one album.
Yeah,
and
very short time.
It kind of sucks because this was one I've been wanting to go over for a while. I really dug this. I got it the day it came out. And just with all the people that were involved with it at the time, I was like, holy shit, how can this not be great? Now, I say that in my head, and often we run into supergroups that aren't very super, honestly. Yeah. But this was definitely an exception to that, because they put out an amazing album, and then, well, you know, with supergroups, you have fucking, you know, members from other bands and such that are famous that they have other shit. You know, it didn't last very long. But we're going to go into that album, we're going to go into their history and why it fell apart, and, well, we're going to start off with their origins. So technically this band formed in 2008 in San Francisco, but their origins go back a little bit further. Al Cicernos of Sleep and or OM, I'm not entirely sure if it's or OM. I always fuck that up. Anyway, stoner metal guy. Everyone fucking loves the shit out of him because Sleep's pretty fucking awesome. Anyway, he approached one Scott Weinrich, affectionately known as Wino, from The Obsessed, Hidden Hand, Saint Vitus, and a fuck ton of other bands. And yeah, he's very prolific. Anyway, he wanted to approach him about doing a three-piece band with OM and Sleep's drummer Chris Hackius. And Weinrich was like, well, that sounds pretty cool. I mean, you know, he had some really cool ideas, and they both had, you know, kind of different styles in terms of the Stoner Doom sound, and they were willing to work with each other. Al came up with the name Shrinebuilder. You know, it sounded really cool, and then he pitched it further to one Scott Kelly of Neurosis. They wanted to round it out and become a four-piece and kind of fill up the sound, and Scott really liked it, mostly on the name alone. He's like, yeah, it's shrines. It's like, you know, like music is religion, this is a shrine to it. I'm all behind it, and they became a four-piece right there.
And plus, I'm sure anytime you can get into a project Wino, it's like an immediate kind of, yes, I will do that. Whatever,
yeah, right.
Whatever it is.
I'm sure it's going to be riffy, and I'm sure, well, with Al and Wino there's going to be a lot of weed. Like, a lot of weed. Now, during this time, they had actually built, like, a sizable following despite not releasing any music, because they've been kind of teasing it to the media publications.
There was, like, this buzz about it, and it wasn't even out.
I was like, oh, yeah, you know, I'm working with so-and-so and so-and-so. I was like, dude, really? I was like, well, yeah. I was like, oh, I'm already on board. I was like, we haven't even written anything yet. I was like, I trust you. It's fine.
Doesn't matter.
Now, unfortunately, in 2008, Chris decided he was going to retire from music altogether. You know, that happens a lot with musicians, and he was a road dog for a number of years and played, you know, a lot of shows. But they decided to tap one Dale Crover of the Melvins on drums, and pretty much at that point, this is the lineup that would go on in the studio. Dale took over on drums as well as production with one Toshi Kasai, who's a former member of Big Business, who Dale frequently worked with. In fact, I think they were called like the Deaf Brothers or something like that. The Deaf Twins.
Yeah, the Deaf Twins.
Something like that. Yeah, that was their production team name.
Yeah. They do a lot of shit together with the Melvins in particular. Yep,
and during this time, they were doing a lot of file sharing in terms of like songwriting ideas and such. So they pretty much got to the studio and were ready to go. Like, the songs were written out because they only spent 3 days in the studio recording this. And then they went along and mastered it. I think the only thing added to it were some extra guitar tracks that Wino laid on top for a little bit more layering. So on October 12th, 2009, on Near Rock Recordings, they released their self-titled album. And this thing is, I mean, it kind of feels like a combination of all the people involved, but it melds really well.
Yeah, and a combination between them that is unlike any other combination, because it totally fits, and you can hear every individual person's like kind of vibe into this album, which is really cool. It doesn't always happen with a supergroup.
Yep. You usually have, you know, I mean, it's kind of like the pack of alphas thing. Like, all right, everyone wants to be the leader.
Yeah, you usually get one that kind of stands out. They're like, oh, this definitely sounds like this dude's music, you know, whatever.
And there's moments like that on here where you can definitely hear, like, oh yeah, that's definitely more along the lines of something Wino would do. I was like, oh, that's totally fucking Al.
Yeah, even the first song, Solar Benediction, that's straight Wino type, obsessed.
Yeah, riffing. But the cool thing is you can hear it pivot. And that's the really fun thing about this. And a lot of it is due to the fact that there isn't one legit frontman on here. They all do vocals. I mean, Dale does mostly backup vocals, but Al, Wino, and Scott Kelly all do lead vocals, and there's this really cool vocal dynamic, these really cool trade-offs. Solar Benediction, you have Wino starting out with his, token croons and singing, and then the big doomy riffs come in, and all of a sudden you hear Scott singing in a much lower growl than he usually does in Neurosis. And I was like, dude,
digs down a little bit. Yeah, it totally fits with this song and the vibe and everything. And the big fuzzy guitars, they just give you that warm fuzzy feeling. And this song also has what will become the token kind of stoner rock middle point of the song, which is really cool. It's got a really cool jam vibe to it, which I dig. For me, it takes a little bit long to progress to the point, I guess. And maybe that's more, and I'll revisit this in this review too. It's the fact that I think right now I'm such in a death metal mode because of this year. If I would have listened to this and we did this last year, it probably fit along with what I was into last year. But I think it's such a death metal mode this year for me that I'm like, come on, let's just get to the fucking point.
I get it, but I like it when bands take a bridge for a walk, and this is definitely the band for that. This is a very expansive listen. If there's a moment on here to keep sort of ramping up tension and building it up slowly, this is slow paced, but there's constant layers of atmosphere. You have spacey guitars, really cool phaser effects, but that pivots back and forth between big heavy doomy riffs as well. So there's enough cool peaks and valleys, but I like this sort of slow ride, and it's not all warm and fuzzy. The music, you can hear these big fuzzy Black Sabbath riffs, of course, but there's a darkness to it, especially when Scott is on lead vocals.
Yeah, this evil kind of overlay over everything. You get these the Wino kind of bluesier, Sabbathy riffs, like you said, but Scott's vocal, he just digs down a little bit, and it just takes it to this kind of darker level.
Blind for All to See and Pyramid to the Moon, he kind of digs down a little bit, and it's not a gruff growl. It's more of a singing kind of spoken word, he's definitely carrying a tune, but it's just this sort of leather lunged sort of sound to him. He is either pretty much the world's most depressed ogre, or he is channeling the spirits of Tom Waits and Mark Lanigan, and it works. Yeah. Honestly, this is one of my favorite vocal performances I've heard from Scott Kelly. And I love how they implement it in sections where you're thinking it's more spacey, this is atmospheric and lush, and it is, but you hear his vocals no, that's kind of haunting now.
Yeah, and Pyramid of the Moon, like you said, he has that chanty part in the chorus, which is this very much like a chant, like a monk type chant, and it's a really cool part, and it fits really well with the music, although I do think it's just a tad bit high in the mix.
I dug it,
but I just love the guitars so much. I just want to hear more of the guitars.
I think it's all of them too. I think it's all of them doing really? A big vocal harmony, a meditative Zen chant.
I mean, it sounds exactly like something like that. It's very
that's the kind of thing I would expect from Al. That is, if you listen to Sleep, he likes to drone, he likes to build on the drone and all that shit. And the bass work on here is extra stony and just smooth sounding.
Yeah.
But yeah, that screams Al. The thing that really stood out to me on this album is Dale Crover on drums. Dale is a super underrated drummer in my book, and the splashes of flavor that he adds to the drum work on here, it doesn't feel like your standard stoner doom band where it's not known for being flashy at all. It's generally very minimalistic, very slow. But he's doing extra stuff, instead of half timing the cymbals, he's going faster on them. There's more clever accents. He has some really cool kind of jazzy fills. The drum work, in terms of the pace is slow, but it's busy. There's always some cool accents, and he's just a killer songwriter. Because I love the Melvins. Melvins fucking rule.
Yeah, I like Melvins. Yeah.
But his drum work really adds a lot to this.
Now these two things don't sound anything similar at all, but it's kind of a cool. The similar vibe between a drummer who's typically in this box and what the music is doing is Corrosion of Conformity in the Arms of God. Stanton Moorby on that album. It was a totally cool dynamic that fit really well. The same thing is kind of happening here.
Yeah, no, actually, I fucking totally agree there. Yeah, you just get in someone that is slightly different because, Chris Henke is solid drummer, but again, like he's just kind of more minimalist when it comes down to like their style. Dale, I mean, he's used to writing strange music. I mean, if you listen to Melvins, well, they're kind of weird. So, I don't know, I think he just kind of added a lot to this, and the mix on here is fantastic. Dale did a great job. Everything sounds very organic. It's very lush and spacey. I love like that kind of analog fuzz that's on the guitars.
Yep.
Like, it just sounds just rich and full. And again, with these long, spacey sections, especially like the last track, Science of Anger, like, I want to hear all these layers sort of build on top. Like, you hear the, again, spacey leads, some droning riffs, a really cool thumping bass line. I want to say there's even some acoustic guitar sort of peppered in there for atmosphere. Like, I don't know, it's really cool that, you know, combined with all the vocal dynamics on here, because you have 3 lead vocalists that are decidedly different from one another. And when they take the lead, you know, it kind of sounds like a little bit different. Like if you interchange them at certain points, there's like, no, that doesn't fit, but this is perfect for this spot.
Yeah, and I thought they did a smart job with utilizing the 3 vocalists and fitting it where they fit in the songs. And although some of the parts that I didn't like involved Al, which is weird because out of all these bands, like Sleep is one of my like favorites, but yeah, for whatever reason in this album it didn't, you know, his vocals didn't work as well as they do in other places for me.
The one that I feel like the most like Sleepish, the one where, you know, that just screams Al, was probably Blind for All to See. I love the dreary build-up. Like, it has this cool bass and drum intro. It almost kind of sounds like an extra stony version of Clutch's Big News Part 1. Like,
yeah, it kind of does, yeah.
Just kind of rides that bass line. There's a cool bouncy groove. And this song just kind of holds this groove and keeps building on it. And it starts off with Kelly's vocals, very gravelly and low, but very tuneful. And then it just turns into this giant psychedelic trip. Like, you can tell the point where the fucking mescaline kicked in and your friends left you in the desert to just fucking fry out there.
Yeah. It's a big change in that, but I think, for me anyway, that song, it kind of crept up on me a little bit because it was like really this kind of chill vibe, and you're listening to it and you're kind of lost in it, and then before you know it, you're in this big epic kind of stoner jam. You're like, oh, this is kind of fucking cool.
Builds on layer by layer. It's like the audio equivalent of getting higher than hell and staring at a lava lamp for 10 minutes and not realizing you're doing that for the next 10 minutes. It's just a great jam. But that was the one that screamed, oh my God, that's fucking Al. But you get to a song like The Architect with its more like kind of chuggy, more classic rock meets doom, like a little bit of trouble in there, but also like a little bit of chaos. That screamed more wino to me. That one's also the most short and I would say probably reserved track on here. And, you know, compared to the rest of the tracks, like it definitely doesn't feel as expansive. Like, you know, they kind of just built like their version of a short rocker, but they still try to squeeze in some spaciness.
We say short, it's like 6 minutes.
Yeah, it's like 6 minutes. But, you know, I don't know, that one, it's not a bad track, but it feels kind of like all over the place. Like it starts off very much like a big rocker, and then towards the end it has this weird like kind of bassy outro, which almost feels like it should have been like the beginning of the last track.
Else. Yeah.
But it's the end of that track. And that's the only one, like, I still like it, but I just thought it was kind of odd. Like, I don't know, I feel like that could have been just trimmed down to just the bare essentials without trying to add anything to make it match up more to the album. Because the rest of the album, again, is very expansive, very lush, very cosmic. And this one feels like it's the most grounded one.
But that being said, though, I still enjoy, even at this part of the album, the dynamic between Kelly's growly kind of lower voice and this really open-ended kind of jam. You don't see those two work well together typically, and they seem to do it here fantastically well.
Like literally nothing that Scott Kelly has been involved in musically I have ever thought was very warm and fuzzy and
you
uplifting.
Don't associate those.
I listened to Neurosis to not feel good, and generally they're pretty good about making me feel not good. But I still love the band. But yeah, I think this is a fucking awesome album, and I was looking forward to going over this, and I pitched this one to Melly. I was like, I mean, I know you're a Stoner Doom guy, and look who's in here. Like, oh, well, fuck, this is bound to be good. And luckily, I mean, at least in my opinion, I was right, because I'm going to go ahead and give this 4.5. I dig this album. Like, it is just a great fucking jam. It plays the strengths of all of the members. The production's fantastic. It's just, again, like, you just sit back, you listen to the whole thing. Like, you can pick a track, that's fine. I would totally recommend picking, Blind for All to See, because that's the coolest Stoney one on there. But jam this thing as a whole. Like, it feels like this kind of cool cosmic journey through the desert, but it's also extra gloomy and doomy, but more warm and fuzzy. Like, there's a lot of cool ideas in here, and I love the layering and the sound of it. Like, this is just awesome fucking stoner metal. And I could sit back and jam this fucking anytime. And in terms of super groups being super, this is fucking super. Like, yeah, this is absolutely awesome. I strongly fucking recommend it.
I'm going to go 4 out of 5. And I think maybe it would have been, like I said before, maybe a little higher. Maybe it would have been a 4 or 5 if I wasn't such in a death metal mode. And I'm like, all right, just come on, get it. You know, I blame on death. You guys are the fault for this.
I mean, I get it.
But this is a fantastic album for what it is and what it's trying to do, and it does it really well. It took these guys who are kind of in the same realm and brought them together and really set an interesting dynamic between these like bluesier kind of Sabbathy riffs that are a little dark. They hint on dark, but they're still, kind of minor sounding bluesy. And you get Kelly's vocals on there, which takes it down to a level, and it just adds this atmosphere with everything going on with the overdub guitars and stuff. Everything they're able to add to it, this gruffness layer over it. It makes for an enjoyable listen from start to finish. And like you said, it's really an album. You gotta think you can't. For me, I wouldn't necessarily pull any of these songs out. Just devote the time, 40 minutes, to listen to this and just zone out to it. It's a great time.
Yeah, and that's a tight runtime for something like this too. Like, I think it tracks about like 38 minutes. Mm-hmm. Like, generally someone brings up Stoner Doom's like, well, this is what I'm going to be doing for the next hour
and a half or so.
But yeah, this has got a tight runtime and
only 5 songs.
Yeah, but it packs in all the fucking Stoney wonderfulness. So what happened to these guys?
Well, they did a few shows around. They did their first one in New York, and they were set to do the Roadburn Festival in 2010, but the volcano eruption over in Iceland, I think.
Oh yeah, no, it has a ridiculous name.
Weird name.
It's like 14 J's and 35 L's in it.
Yeah, a couple K's. It's just awkward to look at.
It's
awkward to look at. I'm not even going to try. Either way, they did make the festival the following year in 2011. And at that time, when they were out of that festival the first year, it seemed as though there was rumors that they had a second album kind of hashed out, maybe. Who knows? But in 2012, Kelly said in an interview that he didn't think anything would happen with it. And in 2014, then Wino said, quote, Cisneros is insane, so Shrinebuilder's not going to happen. So that pretty much sealed the deal for that in 2014. And the guys, they all had other shit going on. The Melvins are huge. Wino's got his million projects. Neurosis was going. So these guys had other projects. Sleep.
Yeah, I mean,
love Sleep.
Sleep Reunited and all that shit too. So, I mean, Al's got plenty of stuff to do. And then to further compound it, and I mean, it seems as though Shrinebuilder was kind of dead in the water, but we had all the stuff that came out about Scott Kelly last year, which, man, that's just some fucking dark, horrible shit. And the least horrible thing on that whole post was him retiring from music altogether, because everything else was just, fucking awful. So, effectively, I would say Shrinebuilder is pretty much done. It is a one-off project, but a hell of a one-off project.
Yeah, absolutely.
And definitely check this out. Like, this is a really fucking good one and done.
All right, if you want to catch us doing our one and dones every day, you can hit the thumbs up, hit like, subscribe, all that jazz. We appreciate it. Helps us, keeps us going, keeps me dragging my ass back over here.
I mean, it's a decent drive. We're also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. That's also our shop, but our Patreon link is there as well. And again, when we know more about, finding a venue for Denver Death Fest. We will definitely announce more.
Yep.
So for now, we're kind of playing the waiting game, but I think we're doing all right.
Yeah, and we're doing all right. And I got a meeting next week with local dudes. So we'll see how that goes. But there's big things we got in store for this year. More interviews, whatnot. Those are coming.
And of course, thank you all so much for liking, subscribing, following, all that stuff. You guys fucking rule. You guys keep us going. It's absolutely amazing to be doing this now for, what, 4 years?
4 years.
4 years? 4 years. Fuck, that's insane. But like a fun kind of insane, not like, oh my god, I've been doing crack for 4 years. How am I still alive? Like it's
you go automatically there.
This is so much better than crack.
This is so much
better than crack, and you're all better than crack.
So without your support, we would all be crackheads.
So yeah,
thank you.
Keep us off crack.
Keep us off it.
Most of us off crack. So with that, once again, I thank you all for watching, and we will catch you later.